Huberman's mother when he was a little boy, a little tyke.
Who was he?
He's the one that publishes this now.
Ah.
And
And what magazine is that?
Health.
Health that started as the Natural Hygiene Society, right?
Well, yeah, this is the latest issue of the book. Let's see what it says. Oh, my glasses. Let me see. They're in my hand. Mark Huberman is doing a great job with this. I knew him when he was a kid.
Really?
A little tyke running around. And this is him today.
Wow.
He'd be thrilled if he would see this.
Great.
You can send it to him.
And because his mom and dad would come to the conventions and they would bring him. He had a brother a little older than him that wanted nothing to do with all this stuff. So he would never come to the conferences.
I guess we're the two Mark Hubermans.
And Mark
this
would
family.
come.
Yeah, definitely.
And Mark has done a remarkable job here. He's in Youngstown, Ohio.
Can you tell us a little bit about when you got into natural hygiene?
Oh, I started when I was 15, 16, something like that, when I had the psoriasis. I was in North Carolina, I guess, going to school. And then when we moved to Montreat, North Carolina, and I went to my first year of college, it was like hard because nobody ate the way I did. And I had to scrump to get what I needed. My mother got me into it, but then she wouldn't give me enough. And I would be starving to death, I thought. And so I got a job in a little shop in Montreat, North Carolina, which was a little private place, religious, in 35 miles out of Asheville. And I just didn't like it. And I ate different than anybody else. And what was your question?
How you got into the Natural Hygiene Society.
Oh, and then what happened was I just never had enough. Mother would give me, but she would hide the fruit from me because I would eat it all up. Bananas. I knew there were bananas somewhere, but I couldn't find them.
Oh, man.
And one time we had this beautiful big house, beautiful home in Montreat, and it overlooked the mountains and the valley and all that. And there was a little store down as you went out of the place where you could buy fruits and vegetables and whatever you wanted, or they had a counter where you could order to eat and whatever. And I got a job there working, and I would keep snipping stuff. I was hungry all the time.
Yeah.
And so I would always be searching for where my mother would be hiding things like bananas and stuff.
Why would she hide them? Do you know?
Because she had everything planned out.
So she was controlling
when. And I was just starving, and I didn't eat what they ate. I ate only fruit, fresh fruit mostly.
And that was for your psoriasis that you started realizing it worked.
Because I didn't want scabs in my eyebrows. And
what were they eating that you didn't want?
Well, she wanted me to eat what they ate, but she would eat stuff that I didn't eat, like cornbread and stuff, and I didn't eat any of that. I just ate fresh fruit.
So you just wanted all of the fruit rations.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not bad.
So she would hide stuff from me, and I would always go searching. And if I could smell I could smell the bananas, and I went in the lower level basement area where she had a big trunk where she kept her comforters and bed supplies and stuff. But my nose guided me to keep going under the stacks of blankets and things. And on the bottom level, in this big trunk, I found a huge bunch of bananas. And I was,
Gold,
I started eating bananas like crazy, and I had to figure out where to hide the skins so she wouldn't find them.
Where'd you put them?
And one time I hid them in my bedroom on the closet shelf, way in the back behind all the other clothing stuff I had on the top shelf. And she came after me once. She smelled them, I think. She smelled something. I put the skins back there. I didn't know where to put the skins so she wouldn't find them.
They're probably rotting.
How old were you?
Drying out or something. 15, 16, something like that. And she found banana skins, dried banana skins, under things in my top shelf closet.
Oh, did you get in trouble?
And she came after me, and I went running like crazy.
Oh my God.
I mean, we had battles.
Really?
Wow.
Over her
Over
trying
bananas?
to keep me out of the fruit.
Wow.
Uh-oh.
I was starving to death.
Yeah.
So
She said cornbread or else.
Right.
that's right. You eat what we eat.
Yeah.
And
Was
it
she
was hard.
eating meat at the time, or was she a vegetarian?
even without meat, it was cornbread and butter
Wasn't
and
good
stuff
for
like
your
that. And
psoriasis.
butter isn't good for your skin. And I was trying to help myself.
And did she eat meat still at that point?
Oh, a little, not
A
much.
little bit.
And
Because she had just gotten into natural hygiene too.
she had been in it for a while.
For a while.
And so I did it because of my psoriasis. I never would have done any of this if I hadn't have had psoriasis.
So tell us about how bad your psoriasis was.
Well, I would get scabs in my eyebrows, or they would be peeking out around the edges of my scalp.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have to try to pull my hair down a certain way so it wouldn't show.
Yeah.
And if somebody saw a kid or somebody, they'd say, "Ooh, what's that?" They would poke at my things, and I would feel
Terrible.
bad. And so I would just have to connive to get what I got. And
So your psoriasis cleared up?
well, it was better, but it could have been even better if I had had enough of plentiful fruit. Without having to connive to get as much as I needed.
Without the dairy, basically, right?
Right.
It was the dairy that...
Yeah. And so...
So when you first started doing that, you noticed a huge difference in your psoriasis?
Well, it kept it under control.
Right.
And you couldn't see red spots and stuff like that.
And I remember you saying your mother couldn't afford the medication, so that's why you started trying the diet, right?
That's right. And either one or both. And so I was having a hard time.
And so at a young age of how old? 14 you were, right, when you started? Turned vegetarian?
I started doing all of that when I was 13, 14,
Wow.
15.
That's great.
And I had a job in the local little store. And it was hard because I was serving people ice cream and stuff. Oh, and my mouth would be watering. I didn't want to eat it.
But you stuck to it.
Right.
Every once in a while, I'd take a lick, you know.
Right. You still have that. I think you have a thing of ice cream in your freezer that's probably had one dent in it for like years.
Yeah, and so
But always vegetarian.
I always had a hard time.
But not a hard time giving up meat. That was easy.
No, who cared about meat.
Right.
So,
So the last time you had meat, you were about 14?
last time I ate a piece of meat, I think I was about 14, 15,
Wow.
something like that. I didn't like it anymore. It was not my thing anymore.
Yeah. And then you raised all of us.
And then I started looking for books, and I would go to the library and I would find books that went along with what I was thinking. I had a hard time.
Yeah.
And I just, I decided I needed to get a job so I could buy my own fruit and stuff, and I went to Asheville. And I went in the advertising section of the newspaper, and I found that there was an ad for someone looking for a person to nursemaid her son and I went, and it was in a lovely area, a nice home, beautiful grounds and stuff, and it was a widowed mother who had a little boy, and she needed to work, but she needed somebody to watch this little boy sometimes, and I applied for the job, and she said I could do it, but I told her that I also had a job as a telephone operator, and we had to work that out. And this little boy, I learned how to manipulate so that I would always have a bunch of bananas in my bedroom. And when I ran out of money, I just didn't eat, you know.
Yep. So you were a fruitarian.
And then I got a job as a telephone operator. And I was still living in that place, but I couldn't watch her little boy as much as I did. And I would go out on lunch break, and I hate to tell you what I did. When I went out for a bathroom break, I would pick up somebody else's pocketbook from the table where we all left our pocketbooks, because I ran out of money, and I would go through it and I would get $1 or $2 so that I could go when I went, and then I would put it back on the table like nothing happened. And then I would go out in the park where they sold bananas and stuff, and I would get a bunch of bananas, and I would just devour about 8 or 9 bananas.
Wow.
And I was starving.
Yeah.
And then I would go
You gotta
back
eat a lot
in,
of fruit.
and I would have to hide the skins. Where am I going to put the skins? They won't know, so they won't know who did that.
Right.
I was conniving. I had to connive to get my way through.
Yeah.
You're a survivor.
All because I had psoriasis. And so, and that poor little boy I was taking care of, my God.
So at a certain point, you were able to integrate a little more vegetables into your diet and not be just straight fruitarian.
Oh, no, I would eat, if I had, I would eat celery or,
Okay.
yeah.
Were you mostly raw at that time?
Oh, yeah, all raw. I
For
didn't
how
cook
long?
anything. I
Wow.
didn't have a stove. I had a room in somebody else's house.
How long did you stay raw for?
Long time.
Years, right?
Yeah,
And then you met
basically.
David Jack Caruso.
And then what
Louis Jack
happened
Caruso.
was that I decided, I found a little newspaper that was vegetarian oriented, and I found ads in there, and I would answer them, and that led me to go. I decided I was going to go to Chicago and get a job and go to the Art Institute of Chicago because I wanted to be an artist. And I just left. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell the lady of the house. I didn't tell my parents. And I took my last paycheck this one week, and I went to the Greyhound bus station, and I got a bus ticket to Chicago, Illinois.
Wow.
And I had a little satchel, little tiny one, little bag, and I took a bus to Chicago. And when I got there, it was night, and I found my way from the Greyhound bus station to the Art Institute of Chicago. I would ask directions on the street, how to find it and where to go. And I went and I found the Art Institute of Chicago, and I went, and it was awesome. The tall walls and all the art all everywhere. It was absolutely amazing. Of course, I didn't have anywhere to sleep. I didn't know where I was going. I hardly had hardly any money left, and I just was awed by the whole situation. I said to myself, tomorrow I have to go look for a job, but tonight I have to go find a place to sleep. Went back out on the street, because when I went to the place, place where you can get
The bus station?
it wasn't a bus station, it was a place where you can get rooms.
Oh.
They were sold out. There was no
Motel.
place. I didn't know what to do, so I got on a bus and I rode the bus all night.
There you go.
And I had been corresponding with a guy from this newspaper that I got, a vegetarian newspaper thing, and he lived in Elgin, Illinois, which was an offshoot of Chicago. And I knew that, and I got on this bus. It took me to Elgin, Illinois, and I found the house of his address.
Wow.
And I went and peeked in the window, and I saw what he looked like in the kitchen, but I didn't let anybody know I was there. And then I said, what am I going to do? Where am I going to sleep tonight? And I think I just rode the bus all night. I forget, I went back to the bus station. And I did all these awful things because I didn't know what to do. And so the next day I went job hunting, and I found a job as a shoe salesman for children's shoes in a big department store in Chicago. And so I got a job, but then I didn't know where to sleep, you know. And I had to sleep in the bus station. I just had an awful time.
Right. How long did you stay in Chicago?
And then I decided that I would call up this man that I had contact with by mail. And I told him, I just happened to be in Elgin.
At your door, in your window.
And he was shocked and surprised, and he said, I said, I have a hotel room. I had about $10 left, and I spent like $7 to get a room in a hotel. And because I didn't want him to know that I didn't have where to stay, and I told him where I was, and he came up to that hotel, and he saw the room I had, and he said, well, you don't have to stay here. You can come to our house. My mom and dad said you could come to our house.
Aww.
And so I took my little bag of clothes, and I went with him to his house, back where I had already peeked in the windows the night before. And
Exactly how I pictured it.
And they were so kind and so nice, and they made a big fruit salad. I would only eat what I would eat. Later on, years later, that woman, the mother of this man, said that I changed their lives
Really?
Wow.
by the way I ate in exactly how I did it, and I wouldn't change, you know.
Yeah.
And
Were they vegetarian at the time?
yeah, but they weren't as strict as I was.
Right.
You know, and so he really was smitten with me. He was a musician,
Oh.
and he was a little older. I didn't know. I said,
He was hoping for something
how am I
more.
gonna get out of this? So I stayed for 2 nights. I slept on the couch in the living room, and he would stay up, and he would never go away. And he
got
was
bad.
hot on me. And
Yeah.
he was older than I was, and he was a musician, and he took me to an opera, and then after 2 nights, I said, well, I have to go, because I didn't want them to know that I didn't have where to go. So I said, just take me to the bus station, and I'll take a bus, and I'll go on back to where I have to go. And he did, and let me out at the bus station, and I had only enough money to go as far as someplace in Tennessee or North Carolina or somewhere. And I got on the bus, and I fell asleep in the back seat. It was real late. He took me to a musical thing. And then he left, and I was by myself, and I had about a quarter left, 35 cents or something like that. That's all I had. And what did I do?
Did you call your
I
mom?
walked into town. It was somewhere in Illinois, I forget where it was, a little town, and I found a hotel that was still open, and it was way into the night. And there was a big easy chair sitting in a corner in this hotel, and there was one person at the desk, and I took my chances, and I just sat in that easy chair, and I fell asleep there.
Smart.
And I woke up, and I said, I have to do something. What am I going to do? I was stuck. I think I had a quarter.
Wow.
Enough to call my mother collect back in Montreat, North Carolina. That's what I did.
Yeah.
I had no other options.
How old were you?
And I started crying. I was like 18, not quite 19, about maybe going on 19. Wherever it was, and I don't have any money, and I said, could you send me enough money to get back home? And so she said she would, and I said, send it to the post office. I told her where I was, and so when I got out of the big chair, and I went, and I went to I got the money. I got the money, and the first thing I did was I went to the fruit stand around the corner, and I bought fruit, and I went back to this hotel, went in the bathroom, in the toilet area, to eat my fruit so nobody would see what I was doing, to wait for my money to come in.
Because they would think that was weird. Eating that much fruit back then wasn't normal.
I mean,
yeah.
I
Nobody
didn't
was a
have a
vegetarian.
room. I wasn't staying there.
Right.
And so I waited, and then she sent just enough money for a bus ticket from where I was back to Montreat, North Carolina, to Asheville and Montreat.
So she wasn't mad.
Well, she sent the money.
Good enough.
Just barely. And I managed to get on the bus, and but before I did that, I went to a fruit store, and I bought a whole bag of fruit, and I took it with me, and I ate, and I rode the Greyhound bus back to Montreat, North Carolina.
Aww.
And it I had hard times trying to make myself be better. Because they wouldn't help me. They didn't know.
Right.
You know, they thought I was...
Did they notice that it was helping you once you did?
Well, she just
didn't
my
care.
mother, that's how she was. You do it my way. And I never had enough to eat. I was starving all the time. So that's the way it went. And then she said I had to stay home then. I couldn't go anywhere, and I hated it.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, what did I do?
You went to Florida.
I started reading these magazines that I had, and I found out about a vegetarian commune in Florida. And that's when I decided I'm going to go to Florida to this commune where you can work and get paid for.
So how old were you when you went?
This was just after all this happened. I was 19.
Okay.
Wow.
And I went...
and you met who there?
And I went down to this place. I took the train. I had just barely enough money saved that I didn't tell my mother what I was doing. And I just went and got on a train. And I went to Sanford, Florida. And I got where this commune was way in the boonies, and you had to be picked up by car to go there. And they knew I was coming, but I got there before it was daylight, so I slept under a tree on the grass by myself. I could have been raped, I could have been killed, I don't know what could have happened. Nothing happened to me. And I woke up the next morning and I straightened my hair out and got myself together because I had let them know I was coming, and they were going to send the truck to the post office that was right there close to where I fell asleep under a tree. And then he was going to drive me back to the place where I was going to be working. And that's what happened. And he found me, and I was okay. Nobody hurt me. Nobody found me. The birds were tweeping, and
it was wonderful, huh?
Well, it wasn't wonderful
at first.
And I was lucky that I didn't get killed or raped or something. And it was an old broken down truck that he put the mail on, and he had to do odd shopping, and there I went down to Loretta, Florida, and that's where Walter Sigmeister was, and he had this place where these young people would come to work for him on these big tables he had spread out, and he had a newsletter that he was selling, and his brother, I found out, he was a weird guy. His name was Sigmeister, Walter Sigmeister. And I found out by going through papers in his office when he wasn't there that his brother was a famous orchestra leader in New York.
Wow.
And he was Jewish, but he was an oddball. And he was into a weird way of eating, and he was selling stuff, Spanish moss, and telling people it would get rid of this and that, and he would charge them money for it and stuff like that. Wow. And he had these people like me that would come there, and he would pay us very little money, but give us a cot to sleep on and some fruit to eat and stuff, and that's what I did, and I stayed there, and that's where I met Louis. Jacaruso. Because he was working the garden, the organic garden.
How long were you there for?
And I stayed there, and that's how it all started.
Louis Jacaruso.
And his brother-in-law and sister, his brother-in-law was a dentist, they had money, and his sister, she was a thought she was everything. And she was always after him. And they came to see him there, and they saw me. And they put two and two together, and they thought, So, I don't know.
Two good-looking fruitarians.
Yeah, exactly. What could go wrong?
So we got pushed together, and that's how I got Lewis.
And then you got married, huh? And had
Was
3
awful.
children.
It was awful.
It was awful.
That was
And that's for another interview.
that
Yeah,
was
right.
David, Louie, and Betsy.
Yep.
That was their
My
father.
mother. Mm-hmm.
And he was a weirdo. Let me
Really into the spiritual stuff, huh?
Oh,
Weightlifting.
all that, yeah. So, to be continued.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Signing off.
Really good.
Part 1.
Yeah.
Cut.